Ahead of the Broncos matchup this Sunday against the Steelers, we're chatting with NFL Network's Aditi Kinkhabwala. Aditi, thank you for spending some time to talk here. Let's start with Ben Roethlisberger. 3 touchdowns against the Giants on Monday night. How did he look to you?
Tremendous, frankly. And it's not, I know that sounds like, that sounds a little obnoxious to say that right off the bat, but he's been talking a very big game all training camp, saying that he feels healthier than he's felt in years. You know, he's had some sort of lingering elbow issues. I guess he said a few weeks ago that it was actually years ago that I don't remember if it was exactly ripped a tendon or had a small tear in a tendon. And so he's dealt with this lingering pain, this chronic pain in his elbow for years. Then what happened is a year ago, as you know, he actually completely tore 3 of the 5 tendons off of the bone in that elbow. He had a surgery that no other quarterback has ever had and returned from it. And he said the byproduct is that he actually feels better than he has in forever. He also claimed that he was much smarter, having spent a year on the sideline, wearing a headset, talking to receivers as they come off the field. And then he also said that he was hungrier, if that was possible, that the year away really drove home the fact that he's not done and that he wants a lot more. And quite frankly, between you and me, Phil, I think that he saw this defense. And when he's won his Super Bowls, he's had a number 1 defense. The Steelers definitely have an elite defense. There's a very good chance that they will finish as the top defense in the league. And I think that just all jacked him up to some degree. So he's had this great camp. He comes out on Monday night. You expect him to have some sort of rust, but he really didn't seem to have any of it. I mean, again, no dumb throws, no dumb calls. He says that there were some things that he'd like to have back, but really on the whole, it was a very, very good night. And you could see how that Steelers offense really fed off of that. James Conner just said to us today, you know, we had our leader back. It just felt like what it was a year ago.
That's interesting because the other quarterbacks in his draft class, you know, Eli Manning retired. We've seen Phillip Rivers have some struggles now in Indy, but it seems like Big Ben is still charging along.
And I think that that's a piece too, that he really wants to be the last man standing in that class. And I think he also feels with Eli having retired, you know, it's extremely unlikely that Phillip Rivers is going to catch either of them. They both have their 2 Super Bowls. I think that Ben would like to feel like he's got one up on Eli, and the one up would be 1 extra ring.
You mentioned the defense on the other side of the ball there. They really smothered Saquon Barkley last week, only 6 yards rushing. What makes them so tough up front?
Well, you know, they sold out to stop the run. They were absolutely committed to stop that run. And that Steelers defense, it is littered with 1st-round picks. There is, and for the first time since I've covered them, I've actually been living in Pittsburgh for 8 years now. They really have the front end and the back end are so elite. And then I know we're going to get to this, but they finally have that middle linebacker, Devin Bush, that guy that sort of is calling their defense that they haven't had since Ryan Shazier got hurt, a sideline to sideline guy. So it's really, you see all the pieces working well together. The pressure, the pass rush is tremendous with their outside linebackers, TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. Those are young guys that just keep getting better. They really have a tremendous relationship and feed off of each other. They're unbelievably stout up front. I think Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward are, quite frankly, unbelievably elite. I keep saying unbelievably. Oh my gosh. And I'm not even that bullish on the Steelers. Like, listen, I sound like a fangirl, don't I? It's funny because my colleague, Mike Garafolo, sent me a text in the middle of Monday night, and he said, the Steelers are going to Tampa. And I wrote him back like 6 reasons. Well, they still could do this, and they could still do that, and they could still do this. And it's funny because when I talk about the Ravens, I mean, I love the Ravens too. So obviously it's early, but the Steelers defense is a lot of fun to watch. You know, adding Minkah Fitzpatrick a year ago really made a difference. Joe Hayden is playing like a new man. Steven Nelson, the other cornerback opposite Joe Hayden, is arguably one of the more underrated corners in the league. And Mike Hilton, they have maybe the best blitzing corner. Kind of this idea that the Steelers can bring it, and they can bring it from different places. They're extremely aggressive. They play with a lot of juice and hype. And I think that they know how good they can be. And that sort of fuels them to some degree. So.
The Denver Broncos select Drew Lock.
The Broncos and Steelers are connected with that draft trade. It ended up being Drew Lock and Noah Fant for the Broncos. What is the feeling like there in Pittsburgh? I'm sure they love Devin Bush.
It's sort of, and we referred to this earlier, it's almost like the Eli Manning trade. I think both teams, at least up until now, a year in, a game in, a year and 2 games in, I think both teams are really happy with how they ended up with it, right? The Steelers love Devin Bush. He's made a big jump in year 2. He's the guy that's calling their defense. He's the one they expect to be the centerpiece of their defense. He's an absolute gym rat. You know, this is a guy, if you can say that about a football player, he loves to watch film. He's been bred. He's a second generation NFL player. He's been bred to be a professional football player. And the Steelers love him. You know, we talk about Drew Lock's confidence. This is Devin Bush's confidence. In his introductory press conference, I asked him, I said, you know, the Steelers have only traded up twice before in the first round. One was for a guy who's in the Hall of Fame, and another, or will be at the time, it was a will be in the Hall of Fame. And the other is for a guy who won a Super Bowl MVP. Is that pressure? And you know what Bush said? He said, no, it's not pressure, because I want to be both of those things.
Well, it worked out in the past, and it's certainly working out so far right now. Aditi,
you tell me, you feel like it was a good trade? Are you happy with Drew Lock and Noah Fant?
I think if you find a franchise quarterback, if Drew Lock ends up being that, I think you're happy with that too. And, you know, Noah Fant has been tremendous as a young tight end here too. So.
Well, tell me about that. How smart, you know, the Steelers do like to mix things up on defense. They are extremely multiple. There's a lot of twists, a lot of pirates, a lot of, you know, like I said, quarterback blitzes. What do you think about Drew's headiness and where he is and his preparedness for something that's not just a simple base defense?
Well, I think that he mentioned that the other day. He talked about the Steelers defense. He said they really love to attack, but there's play calls that you can call to counter that. And I imagine we'll see some of that, where some screen passes, some moving pockets. He's really an athletic quarterback. So I think they're going to run him around a little bit and try and keep that Steelers defense honest. So
that's a bit, yeah.
I'm not sure. He had a couple of overthrows in that game against the Titans on Monday night. So we'll have to see if he looks a little bit sharper, but mental-wise, I think that he's picked up this Pat Shurmur offense pretty well. So
I will say that is one thing I've heard, that he is a lot more sort of confident in the offense and a lot more comfortable in the offense this year than a year ago.
Yeah. So we'll see. I was going to ask you one last one here, Aditi. Just, you know, from a national perspective, sort of what's the vibe about the Broncos? Do they feel like this is a young and up-and-coming team, or, you know, just what's sort of the national perspective?
That's certainly what I'm hearing. I think that there's a lot of respect for Coach Fangio, for sure. I mean, and we haven't talked about it, but arguably one of my favorite coaches in the NFL, Mike Munchak, is there. And he's a guy that you think of him as a position coach, but he is so much more. And he has such a greater impact in many ways on your run game, on your O-line, obviously, but on your run game, on what your quarterback is able to do. And what he brings to a building is so much. Pat Shurmur, this is a great offense for Drew Lock. I think that it's hard to say, right? It's easy for me to say, okay, maybe the Broncos are a year away, but they're still young. You know, they're going to be a good team. There's still some growing to be done. But, you know, imagine if we had said that about Lamar Jackson, that they're a year away and he surprised us. So you never know. You never know. That's the magic of the NFL, but there's certainly a lot of potential there. And I think finally having found your quarterback, which is what the signs seem to be, makes a really big difference.
Yeah, you just have so much confidence. Yeah, I completely agree.
And that's something that you need. You know, it's the tenor. It is the tone in the building. What sort of a leader are you? When you've got a young guy that you're not questioning in any way, that's not rubbing anybody the wrong way, that's, you know, really taking command, it makes a big difference. It really does.
It really does. Well, hey, Aditi, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insight, and looking forward to the game.
Definitely. Will I see you, Phil? Are you making the trip?
I'm not making the trip. It'll be the first one I miss in 7 years, so it's going to feel weird.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, you know what? Have a beer while you're watching
on
my behalf. And if you need anything, you text me, and I'll let you know what I'm seeing from the press box.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.